I hope what you're working on right now doesn't work out. I hope whatever project you're putting your time and energy into does not turn out the way you expected. I know that's an awful thing to say, but I've got a reason for it. First, let me tell you a little bit of a story. I've always been a hard worker. Hard work was always modeled for me. My parents, my grandparents, and it was like really a core value in my family of origin, in my broader system. And I took the message, and my brother did too. And we're both been really hard workers our whole life. But I think probably we both did. Me for sure, I took it a little too far, such that I really identified as a grinder, right? And I took a lot of pride in like just working, pushing through anything, and that worked for me for a long time. And I recognized some success from that, and I finally hit a point where that didn't work. Two things happened. One is I just got to a place where in my business and my growth and my development where just more work wasn't what was required. Something, a higher level of being, a higher level of creativity was required that wasn't hard, wasn't satisfied by hard work. The second thing is my body just couldn't do it anymore. I don't know, I just hit an age where I just couldn't and can't work 15, 16 hours a day like I used to be able to. My body just gives out, my brain just gives out way before that. So I've had to change some things because of just sheer necessity, right? And that's where I am. But it's interesting too when you look at the language, because language is a tool of creation, right? The words that we say are important. What we put out into the world vocally matters a lot, and what we allow to live in our head matters, because we create that. Our system doesn't know the difference between saying like, "Wow, I'm a real idiot," kind of jokingly, and like, "Oh, I'm a real idiot." Our system doesn't know the difference, or it also doesn't know the difference between I'm pretty good at this, versus I'm pretty good at it, like some sarcastic version of it. Like, you know what I'm saying? The words are important, and so like when we talk, it's always been interesting to me the way we talk about work. The language we use, and it's like you're doing. Somebody says, "How's work going?" And it's going really well, and you say, "I'm killing it," right? And then somebody asks you, "What are you going to do today?" And you say, "I've got this long list of tasks. I'm going to knock them out," right? Everything, when we talk about work, everything has this this adversarial sort of energy to it, this confrontational way about it, and so we talk about work in this way, and then wonder why we feel like we're always at war. We're creating war with our language, and so like this is the outcome of grind, right? And so what's the solution? Like if grind doesn't work, what does? And this is something I've had to figure out gradually over the years for the reasons that I shared before. And by the way, I've seen this in tons of clients that I've worked with too. Almost 100% of the clients that I worked with. So when I started looking at this, this struggle is the word that came up. I felt like I was just struggling all the time. And even though I was doing well and having a lot of success, it felt like a struggle. And like how I spent my hours, you know what I mean? And so the question came up, well, if I'm not struggling, like what's the opposite of that? And the first word that popped into my mind was peace. I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I spent a little more time with that, and realized that, in fact, I was talking to a friend about this, and we were having this conversation, and he said, "It sounds like what you're talking about is ease." And I was like, "Ease? Let me think about that." And I kind of pushed back and laughed a little bit, and I was like, "I don't know, dude. Nothing about this feels easy." And he said, "No, I didn't say easy. I said ease. Those are different things." And I pushed back a little bit, and I was like, they're not that different. And as I thought about it, I realized, there are. And easy is sort of an outcome. Somebody who has been to school, and you say, what's 3 times 5, and they say, "Oh, that's easy. It's 15." It's easy because you know the answer. Or somebody that's like, naturally a good dancer, and you go to a dance class and they pick it up and they go, "Oh, that was easy." because they have an aptitude for it, or maybe a background in dance, or they've danced a lot, or a lot of experience. Like for some reason that something is easy, it's an outcome. Ease is different. Ease is more of a state of mind, maybe. Ease is a way of being. Ease is a choice about how I want to show up, how I want to feel about anything, a project, a task, a client, a partner, a relationship, right? It's how I relate to those things. Easy is an outcome. Ease is a relational style. They're different things. So what I'm saying is, the example of my friend who's a really, really good dancer, and we go to a dance class, and he picks it up right away, and I'm like, I can't forget the steps. Easy or hard is out of our control for a large, to a large extent, right? It's our background, our experience, our physical level, our emotional level, like all those variables come into play that we have, some control over. Our, like at a meta level, we have control over that, but I don't have, like in this moment, I don't have control over whether something is easy or difficult. I do have control and power over whether I'm at ease or not. I love the saying that difficulty is inevitable, but struggle is chosen. It's optional, right? We don't have to be in struggle. We can choose to be at ease. Let me give you an example. Last year I spent a month in Croatia. Just went there. I always heard it was beautiful. Went there and found a little place to stay and worked for a month. And I noticed pretty quickly, it's a great place. It's beautiful. The weather's nice. The food is fabulous. The people are super friendly. And it's great. I had a wonderful time. And life happens at a different pace there. I noticed one morning about the fourth or fifth day I was there, I found a workspace where I could go and sit down and work outside of the flat that I had rented. And they had printers and like all the technology that I needed. So I would go there, and I was walking down. I'd actually been working at home for a while and was walking down the street. And there's one of the things that's awesome about Split, Croatia, is the town that I was in. There are cafes outside all over the place. And aside here, one of the things that I found on the first time I went to a cafe was I ordered an Americano, a black coffee, and because they don't do drip coffee there, it's all espresso drinks. And I wanted a pastry or something, and he looked at me kind of funny, and he spoke a little bit of English, and I spoke almost no Croatian. And he was finally able to let me understand that that's not how cafes work. Cafes serve drinks. And during the morning and the day, they serve coffee drinks, and starting at whatever time in the afternoon, going into the evening, they serve like beer and wine kinds of drinks. And so, but luckily conveniently there's a bakery on every block. Not really, but it seemed like it. So the idea is you go to the bakery and buy your pastry, and then come over to the cafe and sit down and order your coffee and have your croissant or your whatever yummy thing they have, and they were in a cup of coffee, and that's your breakfast. Anyway. So that's what a lot of Croatians would do, and they would smoke cigarettes too. Even people who didn't smoke would sit there and smoke cigarettes, and that's the only downside of really most of Europe is a lot more smoking in public than in other places in the world that I could do without. So these Croatians would get up and the crack of 10 o'clock and walk down and sit down and get their pastry and sit and order their coffee. 2, 3, or 4 or 5 of them would meet up, and they would talk about whatever. I couldn't understand them because they were speaking Croatian. And so I noticed one morning I walked by, and there was this group of people sitting there, and I noticed them because they were particularly loud. They were laughing and having a good time, and I remember thinking, wow, that looks like they're having fun. That's great. And so I walked past and went and worked down into the workspace for a couple of hours, then was walking back, and they were still sitting there. And I thought, it's like, this is Tuesday morning. What are these people doing? Aren't they working? There's certainly a judgment in me. And I was hustling by with my backpack and my laptop and doing my thing. And they were kicked back and drinking their lattes and cappuccinos and, doing their thing. And it's interesting too, because people would ask me, how was Croatia? I'd say I loved it. It was fabulous. And they say, what did you love about it? And I would say some of the details, but I would say the energy. I just love the energy. And here's the ironic part. Here's where I have a blind spot, right? We all have blind spots. The energy that I loved was that they lived their lives with ease, right? And here I was hustling by and judging them for not hustling like I was, right? And the very thing that I loved the most was the thing I was judging, right? So it's one of the benefits of travel is you can learn a lot from other cultures. So I learned it's not just Croatia, it's just an example. There's a lot of cultures out there where the hustle mentality, the hustle culture is not a thing. And people who work like we do, like I do, don't fit in. It seems odd to people that they're like, what's your, and the question I ask is, why aren't you working? And their response is, why are you? There's plenty of time to work. Sit down and have a coffee. Let's talk about the weather or music or sports or politics or fashion or whatever you want to talk about, literature, gossip, whatever, anything but work, right? So that's part of the story. There's another parable I want to share with you. I've talked about this other places, and this is a really old parable. I would attribute it to someone, but I think it probably goes back to somebody who's been dead for a few thousand years. So this is called the farmer's log. And there's this farmer who has a horse and runs away. And his neighbor says, that's too bad. And the farmer says, we'll see. Next day, the horse comes back and brings 3 other horses with it. His neighbor says, that's great luck. And the farmer says, we'll see. So the farmer's son is trying to tame one of the wild horses and gets thrown off and breaks his leg. And the neighbor says, that's too bad. The farmer says, we'll see. The next day, the army comes through and they're going to war and they're recruiting all the young men in the village. And they see this young man has a broken leg and they don't take him to war. And the farmer says, that's good. What luck? And the farmer says, we'll see. You see, the farmer knew something that a lot of us don't know. The farmer didn't have enough information to judge his horse running away, his horse bringing back friends, his son breaking a leg. He didn't have enough information. He didn't have enough context. So we almost never have enough information to judge. What looks like a disaster might be deliverance, and we don't know. And so when we're working on these projects, when we're working on something that's important to us, we're focused on it. And we want it to be a certain way. We want it to turn out some way. The problem is we don't have enough context to know that desired result that we're creating in our heads is the result that we should want. That may be the worst possible outcome. And there's this idea that everything happens for a reason, which I think is nonsense. It's really not my experience. It's ego, like trying to be spiritual. It's spiritual bypassing at best, right? Now, everything is as it should be is different. It's an acceptance. It's an allowance. It's a surrender to the universe to let things be how they're going to be without fighting things we cannot change. And I don't care how mad you get, right? You can grieve, you can shake your fist at the heavens, you can stomp your feet. It's okay to be angry at the divine when things don't work out like you want, but don't add struggle on top of your pain. So I said, I hope whatever you're working on doesn't work out for you. Here's the reason. Because when it doesn't go your way, you get to find out who you really are without the outcome you wanted. Let me say that again. When things don't go your way, when things don't work out, you get to find out who you are without the outcome you wanted. High involvement, low attachment. That's the key. High involvement, low attachment. Really work hard on something, but let go of how it turns out. Care deeply, work hard, show up fully, and let go of the rest. Ease isn't laziness. It's not passivity. It's not throwing your hands up. It's not any of that stuff. Ease is what's left when you stop fighting.